right, so I'm here with Adam Kimble, ultra runner, race director, coach, motivational speaker. What else? There's got to be something else on that list.
Father,
Father,
husband.
great friend, good man. And Adam just a week ago got fourth place at the Badwater 135, which is a 135-mile race, not kilometer, mile race that reached 113 degrees, and you finished it in 23 hours and 6 minutes. Do you hate those 6 minutes?
Maybe a little bit. What's funny about a race like that is there are times when you're thinking about those kind of things, and then there's times when you're like, I literally could not care about those 6 minutes at all. So I went back and forth on that. There was a point when I was like, get under 23 hours, and then another point when I was like, don't even think about that.
Yeah. Just get there.
Just get there.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, welcome back, Move Mountains listeners. We're here with Adam to discuss routines and habits and leadership as always. But talk to us a little bit about what that race, because it was so fresh in your mind, what that was like for you, and perhaps what routines and habits went into making it possible.
Yeah, so this race for me, it was a couple of years in the making. It's the interesting thing about that, the Badwater 135 in particular, is that a lot of races either have lotteries or some races you can just sign up for. But now the really popular ones either have lotteries or some sort of system for getting people into the race, and it's usually not easy to get in. This race has, rather than a lottery, they have a selection process. So they decide which 100, they have a permit for 100 runners, so they decide which 100 runners are going to run every year. So you submit an application, but the way to push yourself to the top of that list potentially is they have a couple other, the race director has a couple other races, and if you win one of those races, you get what's considered sort of an automatic entry into the Badwater 135. So 2 years ago, I ran a 50-mile race in North Carolina, a different Badwater race, and I won that, and that got me guaranteed entry into the race last year. But leading into the race last year, I was dealing with an injury, plantar fasciitis, and just decided against starting. And so I didn't run it last year, asked the race director if I could push it to this year. He said that was fine. So I was able to get back in this year. So I've been thinking about this race for basically 2 full years. And really the biggest, what makes this race have such an aura around it, and you know, it's kind of like there's a handful of races within the ultra running community that have this like appeal or like kind of gravitas around them, you know? And this is one of those where you say the name and people instantly, like, their brain knows what to expect, right? Like what you're talking about.
Which is what? What does your brain expect when you hear Badwater 135?
You hear hot suffering, basically. The race runs through Death Valley in July, so one of the hottest places on the planet during the hottest month of the year. And so it's really, and it's the tagline of the race is the world's toughest foot race. So it's really one of those races that it's more about the sort of external things than it is about the race itself, if that makes sense. And so for me, the biggest thing obviously going into that was how do I hedge for the thing that makes the race what it is, which is the heat. And so as far as like preparation and routines, I poured more into my heat training than I've ever done before. And crazy enough, during the race, it was obviously very hot, but the heat was kind of the least of my problems when I was out there. And it's just because for the better part of 2 years, I've been going to the sauna 3 to 5 times a week, doing hot yoga twice a week, and then depending on the time of the year, like in the months leading up to the race, I was going to either Reno or Auburn, Sacramento area, or running in the heat. Or a couple times we went down to where the actual race is in Lone Pine, and I ran on the course there when it was like mid 90 degree heat. And so for me, the preparation was my normal prepping the running side of it, but I put a lot more into the heat training aspect of it. And I've run a lot of hot races in my career, and I've trained for those hot races, like prepared for the heat, but I've never put more into that side of it than I did for this race.
So help me understand the mind of Adam Kimble that hears hot suffering and goes, yes.
Yeah, so I guess the thing that I've thought a lot about this, like I've tried to identify exactly what it is, that keeps me coming back for more and wanting to challenge myself in these different ways. And I think ultimately what it is all of these experiences gives me a deeper understanding of myself, how I deal with pain and suffering, how I deal with obstacles, how I deal with treating people with kindness when I feel like trash. Like I think it affords me an opportunity to dive deep into who I am and how I respond to things when I'm in the worst of situations. And sometimes in those situations, I wish I would respond differently than I do. But I think no matter what, it kind of shows me. It's like it's like this mirror that you can't escape. It will it will show you everything that you need to know about yourself. And then it also gives you an opportunity to show other people something really cool. Like one of the things that I guess I've like prided myself the most on in my running career is, and this has happened to me a lot of times, but I'll be at a race, deep into a race, really feeling it and not necessarily in the best of spirits. But if I come across a volunteer or someone working at the race, I'll sort of joyfully thank them and engage with them. And I get responses all the time. Sometimes it's after the race, someone will reach out to me and they're like, I was blown away by how you treated me when you were 90 miles into this race and clearly like not in a good spot, And so I think it's just an opportunity to show people like, no matter what's going on, you can still love people and treat them with kindness and give them the best of whatever it is that you have to give. And so that's always like a cool opportunity, I think, for me when I'm in those races.
Well, when you say it that way, it makes me feel like everybody should do it. Right? Because there's something that you mentioned there around the deeper self-awareness that has allowed you to tap in and recognize that that's not controlling your behavior, right? That you get a choice of how you interact with somebody. I'm really curious, like what in all that deep discovery over the years, maybe particularly this last week, what's the thing that you discovered about yourself that surprised you most?
That's a great question. I think the first thing that comes to mind is that there's always more to draw from. There's always something, you can always like keep pulling something from the well. I think in this race, of all the races that I've run, I had the longest stretch of what I would consider suffering, in that I was struggling. I knew what I had to do. There was nothing preventing me from doing it. I just had to keep doing it. And that happens during all of these like 100-mile races that I do, but usually it's like comes and goes more quickly. In this particular race, I had a longer extended period of that where I just knew I just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other, and I don't want to, and so it reminded me that there's always more in the tank, even if it doesn't feel like it. You just got to draw it out however you can. Sometimes it's through some sort of intrinsic or extrinsic motivation, but you have to identify those things and figure out what that is. But
what is it for you?
For me, I think it changes over time. For me now, it's showing my kids that they can pursue anything that they put their mind to, and not necessarily succeed, but they can pursue it. And I think just like intentionally putting myself in situations where I'm trying to accomplish hard things, is just I want to be a great example to them of, yeah, this is scary. You might not succeed in it, but that doesn't, like, you should still go after it if you feel called to it.
What do you mean if you feel called to it?
If it's something that you're passionate about, if you like, at a certain point in time, I realized that part of my kind of God-given talent or pursuit was meant to be endurance sports, and ultra running in particular. And it's like a form of worship in a sense, where I'm using this body that I've been given and pushing it and seeing what I can get out of it. And I think more than anything, it's like an opportunity for the people around me, like my team, and also anyone externally that can witness different things. I just think it's an opportunity to encourage and inspire people to do those sorts of things in their life. Like, not necessarily go and run 135 miles in Death Valley, maybe, but not necessarily. Maybe it's do the scary thing that they feel like they're supposed to do but don't want to do because it's scary,
Yeah, do you have examples of that you've seen people kind of rise up into that occasion as a result of your influence?
Yeah, I think, like, it's one of those things where I try to, and like, I'm not trying to make myself sound more important than I am, but I try to remind myself that someone is always watching, whether you know it or not, or whether you even hear about it or not. And the reason I remind myself of that is there's been different points in my life. Like, the easiest example is about a decade ago, I was running across the US, really struggling. I ended up finishing the run, but I was trying to do it a lot faster. And there's a lot of people. We ended up sort of like organically getting a pretty big following of people that were tracking it. And after the fact, I had an overwhelming number of people reach out to me and be like one example was this woman reached out and she was like, hey, I just seeing you and your team like work through the injuries and the struggle that you were having and keep going. She's like, it made me realize that she had been having like back pain and back issues and was feeling like she couldn't do much and kind of feeling sorry for herself.
Defeated.
And then she realized that like her battle in that started in her mind. And she's like, I was approaching it with the wrong mentality, and seeing you guys do that gave me the courage to say, no, I can like not let this control my life, and I can figure out a way to be happy and manage this without it being a debilitating thing. And so just things like that. So now that's always in the back of my head. I'm like, you never know the inner workings and what's happening, but I feel like there's always an opportunity. And it's not like I'm not trying to be performative. I just want to give my absolute best, because if that reaches one person, then it was worth it. Like if me giving my best and one person sees that and they're like, whoa, that was cool, I want to like push myself, then mission accomplished.
That's powerful. What's the first typical thought that goes through your mind when you wake up in the morning?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a great question. I guess the first, or what I try to make the first thought when I wake up is how can I make this day better for myself and the people around me?
You say you try to. When that's not your first thought, what's the first thought?
I've got this, and this to do. We better get going. Yeah, I think busyness is one of those things that is like one of the most like subtle but nefarious things that there is, because it is such a distraction from the things that we need to do and can do to make our lives in the world better. It's a trick of sorts, like busy, like allowing yourself because usually that's what it is, right? It's like allowing yourself to be too busy.
Wait, you say that's what it is as if everybody understands that. What do you mean? Because most people would say, I don't choose that.
Yeah, right. It's the I feel like I've actually been reading a lot of random things about this lately, but it's the busyness is something that is brought upon you by saying yes to too many things, is the most general way to say it. And it's, if you're somebody that doesn't want to miss out on things and has people in your life that you love, that you want to spend time with or do, it's like, it's not bad to say yes, but you also have to be protective of your time and your schedule, and like not say yes to a degree that it makes your life feel untenable. And so and I'm not saying that that's what I do, but there's times when it's like, I've got 2 young kids, so there's times when the days just feel like, wheels spinning the whole time. And I understand that's going to be part of it, but I also understand that there's times to carve out time to make sure that the right pieces are in place to not make things seem chaotic. And I just think for me, the busier that I allow myself to be, the less I can have a big impact on the people around me. And so that's always top of mind for me, is make sure that that I'm spending my time the way I want to be spending my time.
So with that in mind, right, you said there's some things that you want to be able to say yes to that keep you grounded or focused, able to deliver. What are the things that no matter what's going on, you will say yes to?
I think the easiest answer to that, or like the first thing that comes to mind, is spending time with the people that like really fill my soul and fill me up. I have a lot of people in my life that I love, but there's some people that like really fill the tank. It's like you come away. My wife and I joke about how sometimes there'll be something on our calendar and we, like 2 weeks ago, we were looking forward to it, but then on the day it's like, it's just like another thing. But then if you come away from that thing and you're like, I feel so good, I feel so like refreshed, those are the things that you don't want to miss. And so and I know who these people are in my life. So it's the people that really fill me up and have like the depth of friendship and love that give me like that, where it's like not it's just like a natural thing, like I don't have to like mentally prepare myself to hang out with these people, if that makes sense. It's those are the things that I'll never miss, is just the time that like I said, fills my soul and then gives me more energy. It's like some you can do some things are energy draining and energy creating, right? And it's the energy creating ones that I love and that I need.
I love that philosophy, and I'm curious for our listeners, how would somebody identify something as energy draining?
I think the way that I look at it is, if I it's I was gonna say it's more of like a feeling almost, but I think it's, for me, it's just sometimes you'll go and there'll be something on the calendar and you'll go and do it. And it's not that it's a bad thing, or that sometimes it's not even that you didn't have a good time. It's just that some of those, it's kind of like, let me give you a not great example. Sometimes people will take a vacation where they go and do 100 different things on the vacation, and that's great, and it was all like really cool, but then they come back and they're more exhausted than they were before they left for the thing. And I'm like, I think there's a place for that. I like to I'm generally speaking, I'm the type of traveler that I like to go with very few plans and just see what materializes, because I think that lends itself to the best and coolest and most memorable things. But I'm also fine planning things as well. Uh, but I think that's just an example of like sometimes you go and it's just like move, 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 and then there's no downtime at all to just soak things in and relax and breathe and be with people. It's just like feel like you're jumping from one thing to the next. And so I guess that's the like, and like I said, in that example, all of those things can be great. You could be doing 100 different things that are really fun, but there also needs to be time for you to decompress, to relax, to be present, and not just be jumping from one thing to the next. I'm sure some people like to do that. I don't like to do that.
Well, it's interesting because as I hear you say that, so we went from there's things that are filling and things that are draining. The things that are filling really are ease, like you come in and it's something that you can you walk away feeling really fulfilled that you were part of it. The Badwater 135, filling or draining?
Filling,
right? So suffering and hot doesn't necessarily mean draining, which is a beautiful thing. But then we move into this notion of draining. I hear you connect it really strongly to presence and to busyness again, of like, have you given yourself time to debrief or like reap the benefits of the experience versus just moving from experience to experience?
Right.
So could the things that you currently identify as draining become filling if they had a buffer and the appropriate processing time?
That's a yes. Yes is the answer, and that's a great question and a great way of looking at it. I think the context of it and the energy around it, I think, is a very important piece of it. You know, back to the Badwater 135, that was a filling thing for so many reasons, but one of those reasons is I think when you're in an environment where people are collectively or individually pushing themselves in a way that is inspiring. You know, I mentioned off camera that at this race there was an 80-year-old gentleman who finished the race and became the oldest finisher ever. Seeing that is like I experienced, yeah, for sure. And like my experience was filling on its own, but then it's even more filling because I'm seeing things like that. And I think that's another piece of it too, is like when there are, I mentioned like the ease of being around people that fill you up. Part of that too is being around people that are doing things that are, I don't want to keep using the word inspiring, but doing like that are passionate about their lives and the things that they're doing and the people that are around them. Though that's also very filling as well. And so I think it's like for me, it's an iron sharpens iron thing. When you're around the right people, it just gives you, it continues to just snowball energy for you to do things in your life.
It occurs to me that for that to work, right, there's this two-sided element of it, right? You have to be always pushing yourself to be able to give back to the people who are giving to you because they're always pushing themselves. And I'm curious, like day to day, you know, not the ultra runner, just the you know, guy that goes to work, whoever goes to work and comes home and deals with the family. You're mentioning of like surrounding yourself with the right people. And we tie that to those are the people that fill the bucket. And it's likely then, based on what you're saying, that those people are also doing their best, pushing themselves. How do you be that person that people are drawn to because they feel like you're making them better?
Yeah. I think, again, it's kind of just like the question begets the answer, sort of back and forth. I think it's surrounding yourself with the right people.
Okay.
To me, that's a big part of it. It's just when you are, when you've cultivated a community of people, friends, family, whatever, that are like this, it makes it easier to be like that. And I think no matter what, there's got to be some sort of internal motivation for this. And that looks different for everybody. I'm just thinking like, for running specifically for me, it was being sort of like tangentially related to the running community that got me into it in the first place. My father-in-law was running 5Ks, 10Ks, an occasional marathon, and we'd sometimes like be at the races or go check it out. And then I had once I ran like a couple marathons, and I had friends that were doing more than that. And they're like, hey, you want to come check out this trail race? And it's just like the curiosity of it then kind of led to more things. And then once I got into it, then I got really into it. But I think just, I was around people that were doing cool things and sort of in their personal lives, finding ways to make themselves better or to have goals that they were pursuing, and being around that then pulled me into that. And then I see it in all sorts of other realms now too, where, like I'll run these races. I have like the athletes that I coach for running, and I see all the things that they're doing. And it's just, I think more than anything, being a part of a community where people are just excited to chase fun goals and exciting goals and things that really push themselves. I think that to me is, it's hard to be around that and not to get curious about what that looks like for yourself.
Yeah, but as you say that, part of me goes, how do you deal with the rest of the world? Right? Because the way you describe it sounds like you live in this beautiful bubble of like aspiration and hard work and motivation, and everybody raises each other up. And yet you're in the world, you see what's going on. How do those two worlds interplay?
Yeah, that's a great point and a great question. I think, that's like part of the appeal of being around people doing these sorts of things, is that everybody is doing it in the midst of the larger context. And some people are doing it with like families that they are spending their time with, and have to like some people have like a lot more responsibilities, some people have less, but everybody understands that it's, like the world is a complicated place, and it can be, I think, just because there's a lot of conflict and just tough things happening all over the world. Not only does it not mean you shouldn't pursue these individual goals, I think it almost means you should pursue them more as a way to bring more good into the world. And so it's like, it's this acknowledgement of, the world is the way it is, but also you got to choose to see the best of that. And doesn't mean being naive to everything else that's going on. I think it just means focusing your energy on the right things. And so for me, it's like, during a race, for example, like during the Badwater 135, at one point I was like 100 miles into the race, and I got this thought in my head. I was excited to get into Lone Pine, which is like the final town where the race gets close to ending. And I had like 20 miles before I got into that town, and that 20 miles felt like an eternity. And so I started thinking to myself, I've got so far to go until I get into this town, it's like 20 miles. That's going to take who knows how long. And then I had to recognize that I was having these thoughts, take a step back, not a literal step back. I had to keep moving forward. And then think to myself, this is like, you're devoting energy to the wrong thing right now. What can you do instead? And then I said, okay, need to keep putting one foot in front of the other. I need to keep drinking, keep eating, fueling my body. And then I shifted my thought process from this is overwhelming and terrible to here's what you can do. And I think same thing with.
So you watch the news and you see any number of things going on, and Adam Kimble's brain does what?
I empathize and pray for those things that are happening in the world. And then I think to myself, how can I make my community better? I think it's like I actually, like, this is an interesting analogy, I guess, but I think about this all the time. If you think about littering, for example, if literally everybody just picked up after themselves, there would not be litter in the world. And so it's like fascinating when you really think about it, like, and sometimes things blow around and people aren't intending for that to happen. But just generally speaking, if everybody just threw away the things and took care of their own stuff, there would be no litter. And so I think sometimes I have the tendency to want to think about how to make the world and things better on a bigger scale. Like, how can we improve all this stuff that's happening all over the world? And I think the wiser thing, over time, I think I've realized the wiser thing to do is to think about how can you make the people and the things around you better? Because if everybody took that approach, then the world would be a much, much better place. Focus on your communities and the people around you, build that out, and help where you can outside of that, but like strengthen that and good things are going to happen.
Almost like the old saying, like, tend to your own garden before condemning the garden of the neighbor, right?
Put on your own mask on the plane before helping others,
It occurs to me that the reason maybe that so many people avoid doing that is that's scary, right? Because when we have to put on we have to deal with our own garden or pick up our own trash, that means we have to spend time looking internally. We have to spend time in here. And if you're not used to that, that can be disruptive to the stories you've been telling yourself, the life that you've been living. As a motivational speaker side, right? Where's the hope there? And for those people that are afraid to really reflect and dive deep so that they can pick up their own trash, right? Where do they begin?
Yeah, really great question. I think it's just asking yourself, the question of like, who or what in my life needs my attention, and reflecting on that. Because sometimes a lot of times we can get, everybody gets wrapped up in all the things that they have going on for themselves and stressed out about the different things happening in their lives. And, someone once told me, this is something that will always stick with me, because I think the more I think about it, I'm like, that is so true. But what they said was, just remember that everybody is the star of their own movie and nobody cares about what you're doing in your life. And that can sound like a negative thing. But basically the like core of that is that both for good and bad, whether you achieve something that's monumental or whether you fall flat on your face and fail, no one is going to, like, people might see it in the moment and then it's out of their mind almost immediately. No one is going to celebrate your successes the way you are or the way the people around you are. No one is going to focus on your failures the way you do. And so it's just a good reminder to not be afraid to dive into things, to learn more about yourself, to do things that you're scared to do. Because, like, worst case scenario, it's not going to work out, and like people are not going to remember that. It's not going to be I think we have the tendency to think the spotlight is always on us, and again, it's not that people don't care about you. It's just that you are always going to care more than other people. And so in your own mind, good or bad, something is going to look different than how it actually is being perceived. And so to go back to your question about like what can you do, I think it's just act. Think of the ways that you can make an impact on the people around you. And then if there's something that you've been putting off because of X, Y, and Z, start to take action towards that thing and just see where it leads. You know, I think the fear of starting something is the fear of starting something prevents people from potentially uncovering something big in their lives.
Yeah, is it the fear of starting? And it may be both. I often wonder if it's the fear of success. Like, well, what would happen if I were to be successful at this? All of a sudden, I don't understand my life, or I don't understand the choices that I have to make, right? So that I think you mentioned a point earlier that is relevant in the sense of there's always more in the well. But the challenge there is once you've discovered how much there's in the well, it's almost like ignorance is bliss. Like, but if I know that, then am I expected to live that way in my own heart, right? That's powerful. I get really curious when you say like think of what people need around you as a first step. How often when we identify the needs of the people around us, our family, our community, our friends, what's the approach you take to supporting them without rescuing them, to empowering them versus like, hey, let me do it for you, or let me, take this off your plate, right? So I imagine, and your family, strong characters in your family, I imagine if you just came in and tried to do everything for everybody in your family, it wouldn't really go over well. So help me understand what it means to understand the needs of the people around you and then be in service to them in a way that's actually empowering and not just rescuing.
Yeah, that can be a tough line to straddle for sure, of being helpful without being too helpful in a sense, and ultimately I think it's just being a better listener, better question asker, and understanding the situation or the needs more clearly. Because it feels like the more that you get somebody to reveal what it is that they need support with, the better you understand it. And so for me, it's really just a communication thing, of figuring out how exactly can I best help you in a way that's not intrusive or that doesn't make you feel like helpless or like I'm, just like giving out some kind of charity that you don't want, So yeah, it's really just, I think it's just understanding the need better. And for me, it's listening to those needs and trying to discern what it is that would be most helpful for that person.
So with that in mind, over the course of your life, where have you felt like you weren't understood?
I think in the pursuit of kind of where my life is now, which for all intents and purposes is a life that I never imagined or never had an inkling that I was going to be living this sort of a life, but I'm eternally grateful that I am, and really, really fulfilled and happy with what I do and where my family is in life. I think there's been points along the way where I was doing things that people around me didn't fully understand. I think of two kind of quick examples. Well, one is the ultra running that I was doing. You know, when I first started doing these like long distance races, there were some people that were like, "Oh, that's crazy," or "That's like really cool." And there's a lot of people that are like, "Why?" But like not in a not in a this is interesting why, but in a you're silly why, you know? And I think I've just come to I've come to the point where I really recognize that people know what they know. And if you do something outside the box to them, they can be critical of that because they don't understand it. Not because they're necessarily against it, but just because it's foreign to them. And sometimes people project certain feelings and behaviors onto things when they don't understand them. And so another example besides the ultra running thing is when Karen and I, my wife, when we were living in Illinois before we moved out to Tahoe, we both decided to, after we'd done some travel, we had met some people, a lot of like Europeans, just doing like had interesting travel plans, were like kind of open-ended, didn't know what they were doing. Anyway, we were inspired by that, and we were like, let's quit our jobs and travel. So both of us had jobs that we liked a lot, and we decided to quit those jobs and travel for a year. And some people were like, amazing, super cool, you know, but there was several people that were close to us that could not get their heads around it. They're like, so you're giving up salaries, jobs that you like, and you're just going to go travel and not make money. And then when you come back, then what, you know? And I think I don't know 100%, but I think for the majority of those people, their criticism was born out of this was something they never would have done. And so it made them feel a certain type of way, because it's like, this isn't what you do. You work, you get your job, you know, you support your family, you buy a house, do whatever, you know, and we were going against that kind of narrative in this decision. And so it was actually like it was tough to have people that we thought, it's not that they didn't support us, but it was tough to have people that we thought were going to be more encouraging that were not encouraging. And it just reminded me that people generally, like I said, if there's something that is outside the realm of what they're accustomed to, then they're more likely to not be on board with it, not because they're necessarily against it, but because it just isn't something that they're used to seeing.
Or something that I would even take that almost a step further and say, I would imagine that some people have had the thought occur to them, and the fear created a response that said no, and now they've spent the rest of their life justifying the no.
Yep.
Right? We do it all the time, where we're incredible at deceiving ourselves and validating our behavior because it seems like, we have to prove ourselves right to some extent, right? And the brain is naturally set up to that, where we receive confirmation bias and we're always looking for reasons we're right. So there's a moment of disruption that's required to get past that, where it's like, no, I have to break the routine. And we talk about routines and habits, but if you're all routine and habit and there's never a disruption, then we can't see beyond our own creation.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just one quick addition. It's funny how sometimes in moments like that, where you make a decision and you're kind of expecting a response from people and not getting that response, it's funny how, yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But then what's funny is that like, sometimes you'll get the opposite of that, a response from someone that you're not expecting, and it's amazing how that can uplift you in a way that you never expected. And it's, again, a good reminder that you can be that for other people. Someone can be doing something that you don't totally understand, but you can approach it with enthusiasm in a way that is kind of like in service to them and building them up and have more of an impact than you might think. In this example of the traveling, my cousin Ryan, who you know and have met, he is somebody that kind of like from the second he graduated college, he got into like medical sales, and then it was just like he was a very career-oriented person kind of from the jump. And he, like, when we told him that we were doing this, almost instantaneously, he took the information in, and he's like, both of you guys are smart, creative people. He's like, you'll always be able to find work. You know, like some people think not working for a year is going to be a bad look on a resume. He's like, you guys are going to come back and that, like, it's going to make your resume stronger because people are going to think it's interesting. You know, he's like, this is going to be the best thing you guys ever did. And that was coming from somebody who I like watched him build his career. And so you would think based off of the way that he has gone through his career that his response might have been different, but it was the opposite, where he saw this as an opportunity. And then he was right. When Karen got her first job coming back, her boss asked her, he's like, so I see you haven't worked in a year, you know, what was that about? And she's like, oh, my husband and I quit our jobs and traveled. And then her boss, who ended up hiring her, goes, oh, well, I guess that means you're excited to start working again then. Like, you got the energy now. And she's like, yep. You know, and so he didn't see it as a negative. He saw it as you're refreshed and you're ready to go now. So, yeah. It's again, it's like the feeling that, I think when you're pursuing big goals and making hard decisions that you know in your heart are right, there's going to be pushback from people you know, people you don't know. But when there is the support that you would love to get, it overrides all of the pushback. And so in this case, it was and now he's a good friend of ours, Karen's former boss, from the job that she first got coming out here. But I always think back on that as like, he took a chance on her and on us. And now we have this beautiful life that we love out here, thanks to him seeing something not as a negative, but as an opportunity.
Yeah. Well, and when it comes to understanding, right? You said some people look at ultra running and then they go, why, right? Like I don't understand. I don't make sense. You've said some things today around the desire to look at yourself deeper, the desire to influence and inspire other people to do great things, lift people up. That gives a different lens to ultra running than maybe a lot of people have, right? But I guess the question that would put that to bed for me would be, is there, like, if it's in service to deeper looks, if it's in service to better community, better people around you, inspiring, empowering, is there an end goal? At what point do you say, I'm complete? And it's okay if that's not. I guess you've portrayed this image of, we're not running away from things, we're running toward, right? And the toward is a better world, a better community, a better self. So what's completion look like there?
Yeah. To be fair, I think there are definitely some people that are running away from things in the ultra running world. And that's fair. In fact, I know there's some people that have sort of traded out some form of an addictive personality for something, drugs, alcohol, whatever, for running. And you might say like, well, you're just trading one addiction for another, but at least one of them is doing more for their health, you know, hopefully mentally and physically. But yeah, that's a great question. I don't necessarily know what the end game is. I have like a few more big goals in the running world that I want to pursue. And then I think it's just, pivoting and seeing what comes next. But taking that same framework to whatever it is that I pursue next. The same framework of, okay, I want to, stretch myself, get to know me better by putting myself in uncomfortable situations, not just for the sake of doing it, but for the sake of growth and seeing what I'm capable of. I think the one thing I talk to the runners that I coach about a lot is how we can really push those perceived limits, because we all have these perceived limits of either what we think we can do, what other people think we can do. And I think it's important to challenge those, and to say, okay, I've got this thing that I really want to do, and all these people think I'm crazy for doing it, but I believe that I can do it, and put yourself to the test. And then if you fall flat, maybe move on to something else, or maybe you say, I made some mistakes, I think I can clean that up and do it better, and then give it another go. But either way, just not accepting these limitations as fact, or, as immovable, and just putting yourself to the test and seeing what you're capable of. So I want to take that mentality once I'm done competitively running. I want to take that mentality into whatever endeavors come next.
I think there's an important nuance in what you said there, right? This idea of other people saying we have doubts or whatnot. And I think some people, then that fires them up, and they get motivated by the "I'll prove you wrong," versus what you said, which is, I believe I can. So it's not from this negative lens, it's from the positive lens of, I'm going to prove me right, which, could have some ego stuff going on in there, and some nuance. But I think there's a big difference in terms of what can get you through the most difficult times. If your motivation is purely almost out of spite, right, that can get you pretty damn far, right? I wonder, in the worst moments for you on the Badwater, what was it? Was it the out of spite? No, I'll prove them, or was it me, or was it God? What was it that really you tapped into in those toughest moments?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think I'm a Chicago guy originally, and the most infamous example of fueling off of the spite was Michael Jordan. And a lot of times it was self-created. There's interviews where people talk about, they're like, yeah, he said that people were saying stuff about him, and no one was saying those things. He was just creating it in his head, so he had something to fight against, and again, I think that can work, and for some people does work really well, but I also think it's long-term, not sustainable. And I think the flip side of what you said, the belief in yourself, is what is sustainable long-term. And it's funny how specific experiences and things can kind of reinforce things, I guess positive or negative, but in this instance, positive in your brain, where I come back to this moment a lot of actually almost exactly 5 years ago. Actually, it might be literally exactly 5 years ago today. I should check that. I set the record for the fastest known time on the Tahoe Rim Trail. And the guy that held the record before me is a Spanish ultra runner named Kilian Jornet, and he's kind of widely considered to be the best ever men's trail runner, both shorter distances and longer. He held the record before me, and going into it, it's okay, I'm looking at this from a logical standpoint of, this guy is very clearly a better runner than me, right? And he has this record, but I really believe that I can beat the record, and it took me two times. The first time I didn't, but the second time I did. And I come back to this a lot mentally, because it's a reminder to me that when you actually really do believe that you can achieve something, you're setting yourself up for a much greater chance of success, you know? And I think it's one thing to say, I can do it, and like just say it, but to actually in your core believe it, that to me is where, like, that's the catalyst. And whenever I am speaking to, again, to like the runners that I coach when they're getting ready for a big event, I'm like, our goal is to get you to the start line knowing that you can do this thing. And it might not even play out that way. It doesn't always. Like, even having that belief doesn't guarantee the outcome. But you're in such a better starting spot if in your head you know that you can do the thing, and then it plays out. You're gonna, like, no matter what, you're gonna learn from it. It might set you up better for a future attempt. It might just have you walking away with all these things that you've learned. But it's the not just saying I can do this, but just truly believing it. And getting there takes a lot. It can take experience of other things. It can take positive self-talk, visualization, all these different things. But I think, you know, when I'm in a big race, and back to your question, like at Badwater, there are some times when I'll like, and there, I don't get as much of this anymore. There is still, you know, you see it occasionally, but sometimes there'll be some negative feedback from somewhere that I'm like, bulletin board material, you know, I'm going to use that to fuel me. But I'm much, much more fueled by what I believe I can do, and what the team around me believes I can do. And then I'm just feel like love is always the fuel, you know. When I was running this Badwater race, I had both before and after so many people reaching out that I knew were following along, and that to me gets me way more fired up than someone telling me I can't do something, you know. It's the love that you build by doing something like this. And you know, like, it's so cool to, I don't know exactly what this phenomenon is, but like, another thing that I love is just when you are doing something that's out there, tough, whatever, and people that aren't in that world at all are following along and supporting, just because they're like, I don't understand this, but this is cool, you know? And so when I'm getting feedback from people that aren't runners at all, that are telling me they followed my tracker the entire race, like, that kind of stuff really fills me up. Because it's just a cool, like, again, iron sharpens iron, you know? It's like, I think it's so cool when I see friends doing things, even if I have no understanding of what it is they're doing, but I know that it's a big deal for them. That fills me up and gets me fired up. And I think that's the kind of stuff that makes the world go around.
You mentioned a quote earlier around the reality that people are in their own movie. But I think everything you've described here is that the way through it is to place yourself in their movie, and to just be a witness, and be curious, and be on the edge of your seat, and be excited for them, right? Instead of making it about ourselves. And you've made that very possible today in this conversation, to be in your story and with you and in your movie. And we're so grateful for you for joining us. Thank you, Adam. Is there anything you want to leave the audience with?
No, I just appreciate the opportunity. I will say, I know there's a lot of great people in my life, but there's two in particular. One is my friend Jim, and the other one is you, who are just like two of the most curious people that I've ever met, and can be in a room and ask questions that no one else would ask. And I think that's like, that goes back to what I was saying before, where how you can be in service to somebody. It's trying to understand what it is that they're going through. And I think you do an absolutely phenomenal job of that. So thank you for doing that, both personally and for the greater world in general.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for being here.
Yep. Thank you.